Welcome to Module 3 of On the Ground, a closer look at organic dairy pastures, forages, and soils. I'm Sarah Flack, and some other folks who will be helping to teach this module are Daryl Emick, and there'll be some additional resources shared by Karen Hoffman. The goal for this module number 3 is to cover fine-tuning pastures or some more advanced pasture information. We will be building on what we learned about pastures in the introductory course in Introduction to Organic Dairy, and we'll be increasing our knowledge of how to take care of the plants as well as the soils and the animals that make up the whole grazing system. There are many interconnected parts that make up a grass-based organic dairy system. The science of pastures is not just about the grass and the cows. Understanding pasture involves the biology of rumen microbes and soil organisms, the behavior and well-being of the livestock, the diversity of plants and their individual niches in the pasture, the soil fertility, the weather, and the synergistic interplay of all these interrelated parts. In order to have a successful dairy grazing system, you need to have technical and scientific knowledge of grazing management, but also of animal husbandry and some observation and monitoring skills so that you're able to see subtle changes over time in the livestock and in the soils and in the pasture plants. It's always best to be able to be observing and monitoring these subtle changes so that you can catch things early and make sure that there are not problems developing either for the livestock or for the pasture soils and plants. So we need to understand what the plants need and also what the livestock need, and then be able to put that information together with the right infrastructure so that we've got the fencing, the lanes, the shade, the water systems out in the pasture to make the whole grazing system work for us. In this module, we'll be covering information on how to better manage the pasture plants and the pasture soils, and looking at ways to provide as much high-quality feed from the pasture to the livestock over as long a grazing season as possible, so ways to extend the grazing season on both ends. We'll be discussing observation and prevention of pasture problems, and looking at some really interesting information on livestock grazing behavior and the plant-herbivore interactions and how that influences our planning and decision-making in managing grazing systems. There's one piece of required reading for this module, which is one of the extension articles called Pasture Management on Organic Dairy Farms, Pasture Pitfalls. This article is an overview of the most common grazing mistakes with information on how to catch those early and prevent and avoid those mistakes. I also highly recommend that you watch the webinar by Karen Hoffman called Maximizing Dry Matter Intake on Your Organic Dairy Pastures again. That webinar has some great information on how to get as much dry matter as possible from the pastures into the dairy herd to improve animal well-being and create a least cost ration for your organic dairy farm.